Hey guys, what's going on? It's Craig, Spirit of Vinyl. Hope you guys all had a great week. Hope everything's going well for you. It's Friday night. Back to drinking some Bear Walker. Really liked this beer from last week. So it's brewed with maple syrup. It's a pretty good beer. So hope everything's going well. You guys being busy with the holiday season coming up on us all. Hope you guys have been keeping up with things and all that. I have been having a hard time keeping up with watching your guys' videos, so I will get caught up and, comment and so on. But I really appreciate you guys watching. If you got time to watch me right now, I'd appreciate that. Like I said, I've just been super busy through the week and going to be doing some rearranging here in the room. One of my Christmas gifts came in early. My wife told me to go ahead and build it, so I've got me some Kallax shelves I need to put up, and I got some rearranging to do, so I've been kind of busy. So anyway, I wanted to talk today. I'm going to talk about bass players. To me, bass is kind of the unsung hero of your hard rock and metal bands mostly. I don't know if they all get the credit they deserve. And I just want to talk about some of my favorite bass players. Now, these guys aren't probably going to be, some of them might be listed as some of the greats, some of them not, whatever. I like them, and that's why I've picked them. So, my first one I want to talk about, and honestly, I don't have much of his music studio wise, but I want to talk about Rudy Sarzo from Quiet Riot. There's Rudy right there. This is a great record. I also have Speak of the Devil, which he's on. I know he's on Tribute, but I don't have any of the earlier Quiet Riot stuff. I don't have. This is the only Quiet Riot I have, but I always thought Rudy was a great bass player. I got lucky enough to see him live a couple of times. I saw him with Whitesnake. I saw him with Quiet Riot. And he's just great stage presence, just a great bass player all the way around, and a really cool guy. I've heard some interviews with him. So, Rudy Sarzo, I think, people might say he is one of those great bass players. So, okay, next. This guy is probably not going to be on the list of one of the greats, but one Crucier or Croucher or whatever. I always felt that Juan and the bass lines and the rhythm section of Rat was a really good. I always liked Juan. I know he's a little flamboyant in the way he plays, and he's probably not the greatest bass player, more of a basic type of bass player, but I always felt like Rat had really good rhythm section, and Juan was a big part of that. So Juan is one of my favorites. I love every Rat album, and just one of my favorite bands of that time. And I always thought Juan was a really good bass player, even though the whole flying around and slinging his bass and playing it upside down and all that antic stuff probably took away from his talent. But, I think he was a good bass player, and Rat's one of my favorite bands, so Juan was always on that list. And I got a chance to see Juan a couple of times with Rat also. So, in fact, I think I've seen every bass player I'm going to talk about today live at one time or another. Next up, Cliff Williams from AC/DC. Cliff joined the band on the tour for Let There Be Rock. His first album is Power Age, then he's on this, and he's on Back in Black, and all those later ones, and he was the bass player for AC/DC all the way up until now. I think he's in the band. He was on the last album in 2016. I think he was on Power Up, and then he quit, but he got back, he retired from music or whatever. But, the bass on some of the songs like Love Hungry Man and, Night Prowler and different things like that on this record. I always thought Cliff was a great bass player, and part of that whole rhythm section with him and Malcolm and whoever happens to be on the drums in AC/DC at the time. I think it was Phil Rudd during most of their, if I remember correctly. Can't quote me on that. My AC/DC trivia isn't what it used to be. You kind of forget some of those things as you get older. But I always Felt like Cliff was a great bass player and, just really cool stuff, really part of the backbone of what AC/DC did. So there's another one. All right. Another one of my favorites. They only did 3 or 4 albums. They did like 5 or 6 albums, but they did 2 or 3 that were really, really good. But Mark the Animal Mendoza, right here for Twisted Sister. Man, you listen to some, especially this early stuff, Under the Blade, and You Can't Stop Rock and Roll, and the driving bass, and just the way they played, the bass and the drums and the rhythm section and that early Twisted Sister stuff, just great stuff. And I always, Mark was just this big giant beast of a guy and just beat the hell out of the bass, plays with his fingers. I just think he's a great bass player. Definitely underrated. Twisted Sister kind of gets forgotten about how much impact they had on music of their time and, their image and everything else. It kind of, towards the end, people started thinking of more like a comic book type, joke type thing. But, this early Twisted Sister stuff, the first 3 records are, honestly, just great music. They kind of fall off towards the end there, but I think Mark is a great bass player and, he just tears into it. So, Mark the Animal Mendoza from Twisted Sister. Another one, and also from one of my favorite bands, Dave Ellefson of Megadeth. Dave is right there. I picked this record. I've talked about this record, this Lives in Sao Paulo. This is a great set, but a terrible sounding record if you happen to see it out there. It's recorded, it's off from a radio show from Sao Paulo, and it's not mixed very well or anything else, but I bought it. But there's Dave right there. With Dave Mustaine and Dave Ellefson of Megadeth always being the 2 up until recently, pretty much. Ellefson left the band and came back, but basically the backbone of this band is Dave Mustaine and Dave Ellefson, and the bass lines and songs like Peace Sells and Wake Up Dead and all that classic stuff from Rust in Peace and Euthanasia and Countdown to Extinction and the classic Megadeth lineup. Dave is just on it and just a great bass player, hell of a nice guy. Seen him live multiple times, Megadeth multiple times. Of course, the last time I saw them, he's no longer in the band. His solo album and some of his side projects are really, really good. So Dave Ellefson, I think, is a great bass player. In the thrash genre, he's one of the best. So, all right. Next, there's an argument to be said for the greatest bass player of all time, and that is Les Claypool from Primus. Nobody plays the bass like Les Claypool. You talk about a band with a lead bass player, this one's one of them right here. And Les Claypool, the way he makes it sound and what he does with it, I don't think anybody else does at all. This is one of my favorite Primus records. I have more over there, but I love Sailing Seas of Cheese. But, songs like Blue Collar Tweakers and My Name is Mud and, Winona's Big Brown Beaver and all that. You hear that bass line and what he's playing is just tremendous, And I had the pleasure of seeing him live probably 3 times back in the heyday, and just amazing. He's all over the stage, and, he plays with his fingers, he slaps, he makes all kinds of noises. It's like his strings are so loose sometimes you can see him just bouncing off the guitar. Just great bass player, just doing things that nobody else can do. Good enough that the rumor says after Cliff died in Metallica, since he knew the Metallica guys, he wanted to be in Metallica, and they told him he was too good to be in Metallica. So, Les Claypool, one of the greats. Another one of the greats who I think is excellent, and that is Jack Bruce from Cream. Man, you listen to this old Cream music, this band, Clapton and Eric Clapton, Ginger Baker, Jack Bruce, and you hear that, and it's just, they were such a great band. And Jack's bass playing is just tremendous. These songs, Sunshine in Your Love and Swobbler and Anyone for Tennis and all that stuff, White Room and everything else, the bass line is just unbelievable. It's just so good and just this great, pure rock and roll. What a player. One of the greatest of all time, in my opinion. Argument we said be one of the greatest of all time. Another person, an argument who's probably one of the greatest of all time, and that is Steve Harris from Iron Maiden. Galloping bass lines, another band you can arguably say have a lead bass player instead of a lead guitarist who leads the band. He is the leader of this band. His bass is just galloping and through it all. Every Maiden album, just tremendous, man. Just a great player. Just one of the fastest I've ever seen. Just so good. He's got that signature move where he points it out and he's just playing with his fingers instead of a pick and just, going to town. Just a great, great bass player. I love Steve Harris. All the early Maiden stuff, I'm not really a huge fan of some of their later stuff. Maiden got a little more progressive. They grew. Maiden's sound changed and grew, and I didn't grow with it, which is fine. But Steve Harris, still to this day, just go look at some concert footage within the last couple years. The guy can still play like he did back when he was 19 or 20 years old. Just one of the greats of the new wave of British heavy metal movement, one of the founders, I would say, of that style, of that driving bass that helps define that new wave of British heavy metal sound, in my opinion. Part of that is the dueling guitar work is always big in the signature thing of the new wave of British heavy metal, but I really think the bass, and I think Steve Harris has a huge part in that. So, all right, one more, and in my opinion, the greatest bass player of all time, Geezer Butler. What can be said about Geezer, man? Black Sabbath, Geezer Butler, man, I don't know what to say. He was so amazing. Such an amazing player, still all the way up to the end. I saw Black Sabbath on their end tour, and he's doing the solo, and, before NIB starts, and just, enraptured. I'm watching them, we got these great guys up there playing. You got Tony Iommi playing, but the whole time I'm just watching Geezer, just like, holy shit, this guy is the greatest of all time. In my opinion, Geezer Butler's without, Tony tuned down and they created heavy metal. And one of the reasons is that doomy, sludgy sound that comes from Geezer's bass playing. And things like NIB and the song Black Sabbath and Paranoid and Sabbath Bloody Sabbath and on and on and on, I picked this record, Wheels of Confusion, Tomorrow's Dream, Under the Sun. Come on, man. Just listen to the bass on Under the Sun. This is great stuff right here. And just, Geezer's the greatest. In my opinion, Geezer's the greatest. I'm so glad I never really got to see them back in the day. I only saw Sabbath once, and that was at the End tour. I never saw Geezer play live. I always loved his music. But when I finally got to see Geezer and Tony play and just watching the way they kind of feed off of each other and just how great Geezer Butler is, I was blown away. Just one of the greatest of all time, in my opinion. So another one of my favorite bass players, which I don't have any of her music, but I want to give her a shout out. I don't have any of that vinyl yet. I've been looking. I just haven't pulled the trigger. It's not like it's hard to find. And that's Sean Yseult from White Zombie. That's another great bass player. Listen to that, that early White Zombie music. She was great. One of the greatest of that new metal movement, or whatever you want to call White Zombie was in the beginning there. So I don't have any White Zombie. I don't have any of her music, but I wanted to shout her out while I'm talking about bass players. In my opinion, she should be right up there with the others, but so that's some of my favorite bass players. Who's your guys' favorite bass players? Who do you think is the greatest? An argument can be made for Geezer Butler and Steve Harris and Jack Bruce and many others that I may not have even mentioned. These were just some of my favorites, and some of them I could say arguably that Claypool, Geezer, and Steve Harris are probably have to be in the top 5 of any list you guys make. So, but who do you guys think is are the greatest? In my opinion, that is the greatest. Geezer Butler is the greatest. Steve Harris is one of the greatest. Les Claypool is probably the most technical and probably one of the greatest also. Those 3 guys all together right there. And people like Juan and, like Juan Croucher and Mark Mendoza and those guys, I think are good bass players. Can they be considered in the conversation as the greatest? I don't think so. But I think you can say that about Steve Harris and Geezer Butler and Les Claypool for sure. And maybe even Jack Bruce. So who do you guys think is one of the greatest? Who's your favorite bass players? Let me know in the comments. Thank you all for watching once again. I'll talk to you all next week. And you guys all have a good one out there. Be safe. Cheers to everybody. Like I said, thanks again for watching, guys. I really, really appreciate it. And I will talk to you all later. Have a great one, guys.